So this is where I got to yesterday. All the mounting tabs are for the lower control arms are in place here and there. So the way I'm doing this cross brace will be the mount for the shock, and then off of it will also be the upper control arm. It's all just kind of tacked in here right now. I'll have a bolt through there, and then another one down here for a support that ties that. This will tie back into the main upright there for support. I want it to be removable so you can easily pull the differential out if you need to. I don't want to weld anything into the frame that has to be serviced, so I want everything to be easily removable. Kind of annoying thing I found that when I put the final welds on the upper motor mount bracket frame, that when I did, it pulled it slightly out of square, so I had to cut the welds, bang it where it needs to go, and now I got to re-weld that again. Then the rest of the rear frame I'm going to build like the original car, where the rear frame will actually have through bolts here and here that come out to a round tube that goes this way that mounts the rear sway bar, and will also have the rear mounts for the differential on it. But yeah, that's about it. Like I said, all this is just lightly tacked in. Double check all the measurements before I weld everything in. This bar is a little bit off, so I'm gonna shift that over a little bit, but in all, that's sort of how it's all working. And obviously here there'll be a mounting flange welded onto the front here, and then there's a cross brace that goes from the top motor mount on the main frame that'll tie in down here. That'll be bolted there and bolted there, and then it will come up and incorporate the front motor mount, so it'll almost be a triangle here, and the top motor mounts will be on either side of those. Hopefully get some more done today or Monday. Right, here's a picture of the two frames together. So what will happen is, obviously the motor sits here, and the motor mount will be built off of the down support coming from that upper mount to the frame, and the upper motor mount will be there, and the same on the other side, which will help give it some more stiffness. Not to mention the motor being locked in on, there's another motor mount that's going to come here as well, so it'll all be locked in. But as it is, there's not a whole lot of flex. It's not necessarily torqued down either, just sort of bolted together enough to lock down. But in size wise, I'll show you the rear. So again, we have our, and there's the way it bolted up, and obviously the upper mounts for those down bars will go there. So there's our little tiny drive shaft. Upper motor mounts here. So I tried to do the rear suspension layout as close as I could to the real car, which is a little tricky because obviously I'm not custom making shocks and rear knuckles and that type of thing, but I did make what I call the spider. I don't know what they actually called it, but links to the main support, and then the shock mount. The shock will mount in between here and here, and then bolt on this side. Here's the upper control arm, and that ties in to the lower control arm mount there, upper shock mount there, and then the center. And the shock towers obviously are linked and bolted here, and then another bolt underneath. I wanted that removable so the rear end isn't built into the thing and you have no way to get it out. So that's kind of the way I did the other one I built, and it worked. This is the rear sway bar mount. The real car had a stainless steel fitting with a threaded rod that came through and is bolted on this side. I'm kind of doing the same thing. The only fitting I could find isn't necessarily the same shape, but I guess that's all right. I just kind of wanted it to be built the same way, so the fitting will go over this pipe, threaded rod comes through, and then bolted together so that can get separated. Here's the rear sway bar mount. So then that ties into the upper mount of the differential. And rear control arm mounts, which I have all made. Again, so I mocked everything up the other day, but I wanted to try to get the main parts all put together just to see what we're dealing with. I'm just glad they actually all bolted together. So really the only thing left to do on the back is, like I said, work the main angle brace with the motor mount. There's one other small motor mount here, but that's a pretty minimal one. They only used a little bolt-on piece of a aluminum triangle on that motor mount, so that's not necessarily the main bearing point. And then the shifter mount. The shifter on this one is odd because most motorcycles shifter inputs on the left hand side of the engine. This is actually in the rear of the motor. So I have a factory linkage. I'm going to try to figure out a way to get it out and then just run the shifter cable straight on over and up to the front, give it the straightest shot, and make it so it's not too sloppy. And I thought I was going to have enough room to do the bolts from this backside. That's kind of why I left these openings, but that wasn't, so I had to take the front of the seat off, use a long extension to get to the nut on these bolts and when nutting it together. But that's why I made the front of that seat removable, and it worked out. So that's it. I'll probably post when I get that upper support done and the rear suspension mounted and mocked up. Try to get the motor in it too, because that'd be cool. It's a bit tall. You know, the real car cylinder heads are essentially flush here. This one, the cylinder heads are going to be up to this point, so it's going to be a little bit hard to disguise that. But I think if I increase the size of the surround that goes around, I think it's going to be okay. Might just look a little more imposing. I mean, when you look at the real car, I think the motor looks like it sits a little low anyway. Obviously for center of gravity and racing, that's a good thing, but as far as aesthetics go, maybe it'll look better. I don't know, we'll find out. All right, thanks.